So good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the few minutes it took us. We ran into a little bit of technical stuff, but I think we're good right now. My name is Sandra Sheffer-Prevail. I am the president of the Democratic Women's Club of Greater Broward. And today I'm going to interview Harold Fernandez Pryor Jr. He's one of the candidates for Broward State Attorney. So I won't talk too much, but I just want to give a couple reminders. The primaries is August 18th, 2020. If you're going to request your vote by mail ballot, you need to have it submitted by July the 20th, 2020. They should be mailing them out pretty soon. You should have gotten something. You can go to browardsoe.org and request it, or you can call 954-957-7500 to get your vote by mail ballot. So instead of wasting any more time, I'm going to have Harold Fernandez Pryor Jr. introduce himself.
Hello, thank you, Sandra. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the Democratic Women's Caucus of Broward County for having me and allowing me to share this platform with you. My name is Harold Fernandez Pryor. I'm a proud husband, proud father, proud son, proud attorney, and also proud Black man. I grew up in Florida. I'm a fifth generation Floridian. You don't see too many of those on my father's side. And growing up, I experienced the criminal justice system from so many different vantage points. From the vantage point of having family members who were brutally murdered, and we watched the system treat them less than because of the color of their skin or their status. I have family members who had mental health issues and drug addiction issues, and we saw a criminal justice system not address those issues adequately. We saw them placed into the criminal justice system, and we saw their lives spiral downward. But also, I've experienced the criminal justice system from the vantage point of a young Black man who's been pulled over 6 or 7 times in my lifetime, from age 16 all the way up into my adult life. And the officers couldn't give me reasonable articulable suspicion as to why they pulled me over. I've also experienced the criminal justice system from the vantage point of a prosecutor, where I tried misdemeanor offenses all the way to serious felony offenses. And I had the opportunity to serve the citizens of Broward as an assistant state attorney in Broward County. I then left and went into civil practice. And then after civil practice, served as an in-house counsel for a multi-million-dollar telecommunications company. And so I have all these experiences ranging from serving as a prosecutor to working in the private sector that I truly believe makes me the best person for the job, combined with the life experiences. I want to be state attorney because I truly believe that the time is now for us to initiate ground level criminal justice reform while not compromising the safety of our communities. You know, Sandra, for years we've heard people talk on the macro level or the national level about criminal justice reform, but people fail to realize that the actual work is going to be done on the ground level with our law enforcement agencies, whoever you choose as sheriff or the police chiefs, and also with the state attorneys. And so we actually do the work on the ground. And I truly believe now is the time for us to have a state attorney's office that it's actually reflective of the communities that it serves. The time is now, and I believe I'm the person for that job. And I look forward to answering all your questions, interacting with you, and getting to the bottom of this, because I truly believe the time is now.
Okay, then. All right. So we're talking about reform. Reform is going to come in a bunch of different ways, I think, right? So you're right about who we choose to be the next, or who we choose to be the next person to represent us as the Broward Sheriff Office. We had someone that was elected in 2016 that wasn't able to complete their term. We have someone that's in there right now. It's questionable whether or not they would have been allowed to complete their term too, had we not been so close to an election. And we don't know if he's reelected, what would happen with that. So that's a very important point that you make in terms of who we choose to be the next Broward Sheriff person for the Broward Sheriff Office. With that being said, what kind of relationship do you anticipate, or do you expect that the state attorney, the Broward Sheriff's Office, and the public defender's office what would that relationship look like in order for us to start that road to criminal justice reform? Later on, we'll get into more details or nuances of it, but I want to know, how is it that you would establish a relationship with those agencies?
Great question. I love that question, because people fail to realize that as a state attorney, I think it's the most unique position besides, I think, the clerk of the courts, that has hands in every aspect of life in Broward County. I truly believe that if you're going to be the next state attorney, you have to have a working relationship with all the law enforcement agencies, the judiciary, and all the constitutional officers in Broward County. But let me be clear. As a state attorney and under Harold Pryor's administration, we will be an independent agency. We won't work in a sense of trying to cover for law enforcement agencies or the wrongful actions or conduct of law enforcement agencies or officers in their duties and tasks. We have to hold them accountable, and my office will hold them accountable. But there's a caveat to that. We have to work with them to initiate this criminal justice reform while not compromising the safety of our communities. There's a second part to that, while not compromising the safety of our communities. That understands that we have law enforcement, and we're going to have law enforcement for the foreseeable future. And I truly believe that as a state attorney, you have to work with the different agencies. You have to work with the various 17 or 19 agencies on top of the Broward County Sheriff's Office. You have to have a working relationship with those law enforcement agencies. And I truly believe that as state attorney, you should have the phone numbers of every chief and the sheriff in Broward County, and you should have an open dialogue with them, an open door policy, to be able to speak with them about the issues that are going on. For me to be able to hold the sheriff accountable for the misconduct of his or her subordinates. Also, you have to be able to hold them accountable when something's done wrong. There's constant Fourth Amendment violations that are going on in the criminal justice system on a day-to-day. And as state attorney, when I was an assistant state attorney, if I dropped a case because of a Fourth Amendment violation, I made it my business to actually contact that law enforcement officer, take him or her to lunch and say, hey, this is why this case was thrown out, or this is why the motion to dismiss was granted, or this is why I chose to drop the charges, because you violated someone's Fourth Amendment issues. Here's why, and here's why you can't do it. We need to institute policies where we're constantly educating law enforcement officers on their duties. Here's the one baffling thing about this whole situation. We're putting law enforcement officers who's only had probably less than a year, less than 2 years, and maybe I'm being generous with that, with law enforcement training going to the academy. They're dealing with complex Fourth Amendment, complex constitutional issues in a matter of seconds. And they have to make split decisions in a matter of seconds or minutes. It took me 3 years of law school, 4 years of undergrad, and a few years as a prosecutor and a lawyer to really get the Fourth Amendment concepts down and really understand how it works. And so we're putting these people who aren't adequately trained or educated into these serious situations. And I truly believe we have to reform the system and how we educate them.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you a little bit while we're talking, just so we can kind of top it up a little bit too. So with that being said, there's this whole talk about defunding the police and all of these different type of things. Is one of the things that you would be on board is if the requirements to be a police officer was a little bit more? Because right now, I think what you just have to be 19 years old, a citizen or something like that, right? You don't even need a college degree in order for you to be a law enforcement officer. Is that something that you would think that should happen? Should they require that they go to college before they be police officers? Or
I truly believe so. And I know I'm going to piss off a lot of friends who are law enforcement officers. Now, my best friend's a law enforcement officer. We grew up in the same rough neighborhood. We lost 5 or 6 friends from the age of 14 to 25. So he knows it better, just as well as me. And I truly believe, and he got his college education and he went into law enforcement. I think that should be the norm. Here's the problem. The problem is we have to really have law enforcement officers and prosecutors that reflect the communities that they serve, not just reflect the community they serve, but actually like to be in the communities that they serve, actually live there and touch the people. This concept of defunding the police, I truly believe isn't a radical concept at all. It is what it says, it's defunding. I truly believe that it's a reallocation of funds that have not traditionally been allocated or sent to underserved communities. I truly believe that you could tie different allocations of funds and resources that go to law enforcement agencies to their hiring practices. Hey, local law enforcement agency, if you want X amount of dollars, 70, 80% of your workforce or law enforcement officers should actually live in the communities that they patrol. There's different types of allocations and funding.
So I'm gonna stop you again. I'm gonna stop you again, right? And this is why I'm gonna stop you again, because a lot of times to get them to live in the communities that they to live in the communities where they patrol is problematic. I teach at a couple of the colleges here, right? And I have a student that's a CJ major, and he has 8 traffic tickets, right? He
Wow.
can't get into the academy with 8 traffic tickets.
No, right.
Everything else about him, it would be perfect. He's from the neighborhood, he understands, and he's from one of those communities where that's over police. Every time he turns around, they're pulling him over for one thing or another. His tents were too dark, his music was too loud, or he didn't have the light behind the license plate. Like literally, a lot of pretext stop happen. He ends up with all these citations, and now he can't be part of that community. And so like these, yes, you want law enforcement officers to be representative of the community they serve, but particularly people that come from heavily policed neighborhoods, it's hard to get out of there without some sort of law violation. I mean, it's difficult.
Look, I grew up, I know it. I grew up in a rough neighborhood. I have friends who've been in and out of the system, and they're not bad people. It's because of the over-policing of our communities. That's where I come in as state attorney. As state attorney, you have to have policies where you don't try certain offenses. I think when you get to crimes of poverty, my term is I don't want to, as the next state attorney of Broward County, to criminalize poverty. We know that in the criminal justice system, people of color and poor people have been traditionally placed into this vicious cycle we call the criminal justice system. Why? Normally for low-level offenses, for low-level drug offenses, for possession of drug paraphernalia, for driving while license suspended, for other offenses that they probably shouldn't be arrested for. And what happens? You get into the justice system, you get into that vicious cycle. You have an exorbitant fine placed upon you. You're placed on probation for some reason or another. You violate probation, right? So then you fall into that system. And then for some reason or another, you're caught again because your community is over-policed. And there you go. You're in the criminal justice system. That's why we need progressive state attorneys and prosecutors, not only in Broward County, but throughout the country to kind of shift this cycle. And I think if we combat all of these issues with lessening the over-policing of our minority communities, we don't criminalize poverty, have progressive prosecutors that do that, and also we elect judges who can actually understand the communities that we serve, I think we can stop this vicious cycle, and I think we could have more law enforcement officers from our community, like the example that you gave. But it's going to take a full collaborative effort. It's going to take a prosecutor, a state attorney, to build these relationships with the various institutions and constitution officers to think outside the box and to initiate this criminal justice reform we've been talking about for so many years.
Right. And so we're here with this reform. How are you going to get buy-in, right? You want to come into this office and get people to change the way they do things. I spoke to someone that was a PD, and she was talking about how they were representing some guy that was homeless, sleeping on a park bench, got arrested, taken to jail with a $25 fine. Dude sleeping on a bench. He ain't got $25 to get out of jail, right?
No.
This is insane, right? So it's one thing for the cop to arrest him. It's a whole nother thing for the state to actually decide to file charges against this guy. And then for the state to have to appoint a public defender or somebody to represent him. I mean, so as a sturdy attorney, would you be willing to take the position that, okay, policeman, you want to bring this dude to jail because he was sleeping on a park bench? We're not prosecuting this case. I mean, he might end up having to sleep there overnight before he does first appearances or whatever. But, would you be willing to take a stance like that to get these law enforcement officers to stop arresting homeless people and give them a card to a homeless shelter or something? I don't know.
Right. And here's the thing, people always talk about, and I don't talk about my other opponents because I think this race is more important than any of us. And I think it's negligent, and I think it's just insensitive to talk about anybody else other than the issues that we have going before us. I truly believe we hear people talk about, well, if I'm state attorney, I don't have control over law enforcement agencies or police departments. You don't. That's obvious, right? But you have a voice. You're probably the chief law enforcement officer, chief legal officer in this county, even though it seemed different than that for however 40 plus years that's been the case. But actually the state attorney should be the chief legal officer in the county, but we just haven't had leadership in that aspect. And I truly believe that a state attorney, and when I take office, I am willing, and I have done it as president of TJ Reddick Bar Association and various civic organizations I've been a part of. I am willing, and I will be a voice. I will be willing to go to law enforcement agencies, to the various sheriffs from the various agencies in Broward County, chiefs of police from the various agencies in Broward County, and the sheriff to communicate these issues, to communicate these concerns, to tell them, hey, you're big about, saving taxpayers' dollars and not misallocating funds that have been allocated to you by the legislature or by your various local governments. If I'm telling you that I'm not going to prosecute possession of cannabis cases 20 grams or less, you probably shouldn't be arresting people for cannabis with 20 grams or less, because all you're going to do is just put them in or give them a notice to appear, and I'm just going to drop the case. You have to have a state attorney that's willing to have these tough discussions with them and let them know this is how it is. It's a new order. Don't waste taxpayer dollars. And the moment that we get that, and also it goes to another point, I want to invest in software that tracks this information. So, for example, if you're the chief of Wilk Manors Police and you're constantly arresting people for possession of cannabis cases 20 grams or less and charging them with possession of paraphernalia, we're going to have that information. And guess what? We're going to report that information quarterly to the community to say, hey, we're not trying these cases, but your local chief is constantly pursuing these type of cases. We need state attorneys that are willing to do that, to not be complicit in the fundamental violation of people's rights. And also, we have an opportunity to implement policy, to actually gear and steer policy in Broward County. And I welcome that challenge. I'm built for it. I think that's why I'm in this race.
That's why you're in this race. Okay, marijuana is a little tricky one, right?
So, it is.
So it's 20 grams or less. Most people have a little bit more than 20 grams of weed if they bought that weed life, right? So
yes, they bought that life.
That they do, they're gonna end up with more than 20 grams of marijuana. And if it's more than 20 grams, it's a felony. Then, when you become a felon, it has all kind of crazy effects on your life, right? Yeah. And I have a scenario. So I have a friend of mine whose son he hears voices. So I don't know if he's schizophrenic, bipolar, whatever. He hears voices. When he was on traditional medication, because, they just going to give him the Zoloft, the Prozac, whatever. He's like, all I do is sleep, auntie, and then I can't do anything. But when he smokes weed, calms him down. He don't hear the voices, and it's good. And it's better for him, right? But then he gets arrested about every 2-3 weeks, at least once a month, at most once a month, because he has possession of marijuana. And the reason why he has the marijuana is to quiet the voices in his head.
For medicinal purposes.
You have someone that comes into your office and they have more than 20 grams of marijuana, and it's clear that they have. Are you going to prosecute that person and make them a felon and just completely cause all kind of problems in their life?
Short answer, no. That goes with the discretion. Traditionally, prosecutors in Broward County haven't had discretion. They haven't been encouraged to use their common sense. As my daddy would always say, or my granddad as well, common sense ain't so common. And that is the case. Mm-hmm. But that goes into your hiring practices, recruiting people, talented people to actually understand the communities that they serve. In a situation like that, all our prosecutors would know that any possession of cannabis case, if it's 20 grams or less, we're not trying it, so don't even bother. Secondly, we would then have a scale. We tell them, hey, if it's above that threshold, look at the facts. So in a classic scenario that you presented to me, our prosecutors would be trained. A situation like that where someone is using it for medicinal purposes with a medical card or no medical card, we're not prosecuting those cases. Now, if it's a situation where it's above 20 grams and the facts kind of lends itself where it's not a medicinal situation, we're going to offer diversion. Which hasn't traditionally been offered for situations like that. You don't have to go to drug court. We're going to create a diversionary program so we don't have to file those charges. And so we can drop those cases and not put you into the system. Those are some creative ways that I think that we can approach these issues while not criminalizing people for low-level drug offenses. I understand people are going to have more than 20 grams. But I find based on my research and studies and experience as a prosecutor, a lot of the cases, the backload of cases in the misdemeanor court trial docket and just in the criminal justice system alone were those possession of cannabis cases that were 20 grams or less. So that's where I'm starting. That's the threshold that I'm starting with the hope and the thought that it is decriminalized. And as state attorney, I would. If I got a question from the legislature and that issue or item is up in the House, I'll take myself up there to Tallahassee and I'll tell them that they should legalize it. And I'd give it from a criminal justice standpoint.
Okay, I want to
push my stance on
that just a little bit more because I have another client, right? I had another client. This is from years ago, right? So what he used to do is when he got paid on Friday, it's like he would go to the weed man and get all his weed for the weekend, right?
Yeah.
So he gets pulled over and he has like a, you know, a bunch of weed on him, but it's not to,
A lot.
for him to traffic. He's like, no, 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 no. And then, you
Yeah.
know, my clients call me Miss Sandra. Nah, Miss Sandra, I just get all the weed that I need for the weekend on Friday when I get off for work, so I don't have to go back to the house and get more, right? He
Right.
like, so,
He buys it in bulk. He
right?
buys it in bulk.
So if you get this guy in your office and you believe that he really just buys all the weed that he needs for the weekend, and he has an amount that's, that looks like he's trafficking marijuana, but he isn't, what do you do with a scenario like that?
That goes back to the training and common sense and actually looking at the facts. You have to look, you know, I hate to say it, sometimes you have to look at the person's record. I venture to say he probably doesn't have a crazy record at all, right?
Nope, just like the smoke weed.
Exactly.
Like the
And
smoke
so that goes to that and it goes to the point, common sense, giving your prosecutors discretion. That's another fact pattern and scenario. If you're adequately training your prosecutors to understand the communities that they serve, to actually look beyond the probable cause affidavit, because I guarantee that probable cause affidavit was a little bit exaggerated from the actual reality of the situation, right?
Yeah.
And so that's another problem that we have. We have state attorney's offices, not only in Broward County, but throughout the country and the state, where they're traditionally relying on probable cause affidavits to make their filing decisions, and they're doing nothing else. That, like I said, once again, goes to training and giving your prosecutors discretion to think outside the box, and also look past those probable cause affidavits. And I'm a strong believer, I'm an advocate for having state attorney's offices that are reflective of the communities that they serve. If you have prosecutors of color, women prosecutors, if you have prosecutors from the LGBTQ plus community and other communities, Hispanics, you have a workforce there where we can bounce ideas off of each other. We can look at fact scenarios similar to your clients and make appropriate decisions. If you have prosecutors that have never experienced or seen certain things like these, you can't do the job, honestly, in my opinion. Now, if you never lived in that, you can learn. That's part of having a diverse workforce. And so I'm an advocate for that because it makes a huge difference. Because sometimes it could be a matter of life or death.
Okay, so you touched on a couple of things that we're going to talk about from the what you were saying. So the clients that I have, I mainly practice immigration law. So my clients were immigrants, right?
Right.
So these weed charges ended up being like some real problems for them. And one of the ones that I'll tell you, he ended up getting deported because he got charged with trafficking in a controlled substance because he had a whole bunch of, you know, his weekend amount of weed, and you can't really do too much. I mean, the laws have changed since then, but he really some of it's changed, and you know they have this thing about if it's sale, enumeration, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, he was removed from the United States because of that. So immigration is a big issue in the criminal justice system, right? I have that person that had the weed, and I had another guy that got caught up in one of those police sting with a female cop pretending to be a prostitute. Right? He doesn't understand what's going on. The case ended up getting dismissed, but he was turned over to ICE, and he's on his way back to his native country also. So, and sometimes and when we did criminal defense work, because I've done some post-conviction 3.850 motions to try to get people charges, not even dismissed, just like, just reduce the amount of time, just reduce the charge so this person doesn't get deported and they're not separated from their families. You know, it's a lot of pushback in Broward County. It's a lot of pushback in Broward County. So what can we expect from your administration in trying to work with, people that are immigrants that are coming through the system to not, maybe, I don't know if you guys are responsible for notifying ICE, but even if you're not, even if you have no control over that, if a member of the private bar or a member from someone from the public defender's office is trying to work out something that would allow this person to stay in the United States, is that something that you would train or encourage your prosecutors to do?
Yes. When I started as a prosecutor, they give you files. You have about 300 files or so, and they're telling you, all right, get after it, right? You're not trained about all the issues that you're going to encounter. You're not trained about the possible immigration consequences if someone pleads out a case, right? You're taught it if you're a public defender, if you're a defense attorney, right? And that's because recently, or actually not that long ago, it's the Supreme Court of Padilla versus Kentucky, which is a landmark Supreme Court case, which is, for those who don't understand, immigrants in this country, before pleading out the case, must be fully abreast as to the full immigration consequences before they plea out a case, right? The issue, what I've noticed in prosecution, especially throughout the state of Florida and South Florida, because we have a huge immigrant population, right? Spanning across Latin America, Central America, and the Caribbean. And also it adversely affects our Haitian community as well. I saw it firsthand as a prosecutor, and I see it firsthand now. As state attorney, I would invest in creating a Padilla unit, immigration unit, but we call it the Padilla unit. We have to look at the budgeting. We're gonna have to look at the numbers. First day of office, I'm gonna do an audit, full audit of the budget to see where we can create some of these units and where we can put some monies. But also there is grants and fundings out there for issues like that to where we can create a Padilla unit. And so this unit right now would probably have between 3 to 5 attorneys. If not, we're gonna at least have one attorney. Sole responsibility is to train our prosecutors on immigration issues that are going on, to fully understand immigration consequences before a case is pled out. There's always been a school of thought that state attorneys and prosecutors, we don't worry about that. We give our offer, we plead a case out, we leave that to the defendant and the defense attorney or defender to figure that out. I truly believe that when we don't even have to be in South Florida, which has a huge immigration population, I truly believe that state attorneys, prosecutors are the sole keepers of justice, fairness, and equality. And so I truly believe that if you're a prosecutor, you yourself should understand how someone's immigration status in this country could be affected by your plea offers. And you should understand certain facts and scenarios that are going on in a given situation before you offer a plea in a case. You still have to hold them accountable. If the facts are there and the issues are there and someone commits a heinous crime, you have to do what you have to do. But if there's a situation where we're being a little heavy-handed in our sentencing or our offers, and the facts don't add up with the police officer's probable cause affidavit, you see how everything's coming full scale here,
yes,
full circle here. You should be trained as a state attorney to understand the potential immigration consequences to someone pleading out to
absolutely.
a case. So to answer your question, yes, we will, and we'll go back retroactively. You know, I truly believe if someone brings it up, we'll look at those cases retroactively and do the right thing.
Right, because those are lives. I mean, in your office, you know, they may see it as a file number, but that's somebody's life, right? That decision has all kind of consequences. You have situations where, you know, families are separated, you know, some of these people sit back and they have young children. And I have another scenario that I spoke to two of the other attorneys that I've already spoken with about, you know, and we talked about the Caribbean. We're talking about immigration. We'll get into it a little bit more, but then we're also going to talk about the cultural differences, right? So you said you the office to be representative of the community that they serve. In South Florida, you said it, the Caribbean, South America, Central America, one of the things they do is they beat their kids, right?
Black Americans too.
So I have a client that's in proceedings now, child abuse, no harm, right? Because he beat his son because the boy was acting up. And he got arrested and he was like, wait, what? You know what I mean? Like, and literally that's the way they were disciplined. And here we go. We have a guy that's about to, and you know, and he can literally be sent back, separated from his young child with the inability to come back to the United States anymore because of this. So the question that I'm asking is that when you have someone, and I know ignorance of the law is not an excuse. We're going to put that aside. You really have someone that gets arrested for what they see as disciplining their child, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that? Like, because that's a big cultural difference. And it's they beat their kids. And the parents, and one of the things about that I find problematic is a lot of times parents lose control of their household because they've lost that ability to discipline their children, right? Because the kids are like, I'm gonna call 911 or something like that. But my real question to you is, as you say you're gonna be the next state attorney of Broward County, if you have a situation where you have someone that's from the islands or South America that disciplined their child in a way that they understood that you discipline children, are you gonna have that person have a felony conviction that has all kind of other consequences as a result of it?
First, let me say this. Harold Pryor and the Harold Pryor campaign, we do not condone violence against children or abuse against children. But I understand the cultural differences. Look, I was spanked, as a kid. I was beat. And my dad had to be a little bit more tough on me based on the circumstances that we grew up in. And so we have to understand those cultural differences. And here's my point, and I know I may sound like a broken record because I mentioned it earlier. That goes to recruiting and retaining a diverse workforce in the state attorney's office. If we have state attorneys that are in those units, that are making those filing decisions, that actually have Caribbean or Latin American background, right? That can kind of understand some of these fact scenarios, that can actually look at a probable cause affidavit.
They're probably mad they got to
say,
prosecute that case. They're like, wait,
okay,
what?
right.
I beat them too, you know what I mean?
Right.
But
because if you look at the probable cause, people who don't really understand what's going on. I said, look at the probable cause affidavit. There's been times when you read a probable cause affidavit and you speak with the law enforcement officer, totally different case because they're not next to their probable cause affidavit. They've had 2-3 tries to actually edit it. Their sergeant has looked at it and said, go back, do it a little bit better. And then also the beautiful thing is body-worn cameras. But in certain scenarios like this where there might not be a body-worn camera, it's always good to have prosecutors that understand the communities that they serve, that can read between the lines, that can actually bring in the victim and actually bring in the other people that may be involved and actually do an investigation and look into the facts of the case and look at the background of the situation and make an appropriate decision there. But then you also have to give your prosecutors discretion. But also with that level of trust, it's incumbent upon me to train my prosecutors, to do my job and ensure that my prosecutors are trained. So I know that when I give them that discretion, I'm confident that most of the time they're going to make the right decision. And so that comes with me doing my job as state attorney, hiring the right people to actually do the training. Not do this once a month type training. It has to be continuous training, not the once a year, or twice a year training. But we have to do continuous training from the time that you start in our office to your last day. Because we owe that to our prosecutors, and we also owe that to the public, that we have prosecutors that are trained and actually understand the jobs that they do.
All right, so you want to come into the office, you want to come with all these progressive changes, you're not getting buy-in from your prosecutor, for the people that work for you. What are you going to do with that? Because I have an example of Kim Gardner. She was one of the, because there's a couple progressive prosecutors out there. Kim Fox, Marilyn Mosby, Ayala in Orlando, in Philadelphia. So Kim Gardner goes in. She wants to do all these changes in the office. Everybody leaves. She lost 100% of her staff. What you gonna do if that happens? They're like, no, Mr. Pryor, we ain't trying to do none of what you're talking about. What you gonna do with that?
Well, it's twofold, and I have a plan. 4 months ago, I actually reached out to someone who I have in mind to help out with the recruiting process, with the expectation of knowing that when I take office, there are going to be people that are going to outright resign, right? They're going to quit.
They just go quit.
We're going to begin the process immediately of actually actively recruiting a diverse workforce, a diverse staff of state attorneys to come in and take over the jobs immediately, right? That's one. Secondly, it still doesn't weed out the bad actors, right? So initially, I'm going to have
bills to pay. They gonna
Initially, I'm gonna have goals. Right, you have to pay your mortgage.
Payments. I got mortgage payments.
I got bills
right here.
Yeah. So initially, I'm going to have a statement of my goals and objectives for the office, our plan, and things that we want to do, and I'm going to share that with all the attorneys. And the thing is going to be, can you get behind this? Do you agree with it? We know people are going to sign off and say, yes, of course, right? But they have alternative motives. And there are going to be some, they may look at this and say, Harold, can't do it. We'll give them an opportunity to resign. We'll thank them for the service, and we'll send them on their way. For those bad actors, I have a plan to track that. So those that say, Harold, we agree with your goals and objectives, we're all for it. But then, at home, they're calling black folk animals on Facebook. Mm-hmm. We have to have a way to track that, and there's ways to do that. As state attorney, like I said, first day of office, one of the first things that I'm doing first day of office is we're going to begin the process of auditing our books and seeing what we can do to invest in certain things that can help us do our jobs and actually do a better job for the community. One of those things is to invest in a software that can track cases for each individual prosecutor. We can look at the authors, we can look the demographical information, we can look at the sentencing and disposition of those cases across demographical information, whether you're black, white, Hispanic, or region, where you're at. And what we're going to do on a quarterly basis, we're going to look at these reports of each individual prosecutor. And we'll do annual reports and annual reviews. So if you have that prosecutor who says that they're on board, mm-hmm. but we're looking at your 300 cases that you have and the 60 or 70 cases that you've pled out in a given year or a given period, and we see that it's heavily stacked against people of color, right? And we see that the sentencing disparities between whites and blacks are uneven, we're going to let that person go. That's how you get those bad actors out. That's how you get those hidden races or people who have alternative agendas out of your office. So I have a threefold plan. A threefold plan is to identify those people who are not for our plan of progressive change, then also give them an opportunity to come on board. And then we're not going to stop there. We're going to track you. We're going to look at your cases to see if, in fact, you're holding true to your commitment to our policies and goals as a state attorney office. I think it's incumbent upon me to do that, and I feel that we owe that to the citizens of Broward County.
All right. So the Broward County also has a couple reputations that are just not so cute, right? The other one is that they like to direct file juveniles through adult court. How do you plan on addressing that? What do you think you should be done about that? Because there's a lot of information out there about, you know, brain development. Do they really understand what's going on? Why are you throwing this kid's life away? And then, you know, there is a disparity in the kids whose life they decide to throw away and the one who they decide to, oh no, put him through, you know, the juvenile system and get him some treatment or put him in a program or something. So what are your thoughts on and how you plan to address the juveniles being direct filed into adult court?
Thank you for that question, Sandra, because it's extremely personal to me in the sense that, you know, I have friends who are in and out of the system, and it could have been me, right? But also I have a situation where I actually mentor young youth, youth of color, because I truly feel that it's my duty as a Black man or a man that's striving for success to reach back and help out those youth. I truly believe that, and based from experience in the numbers, I don't need to have any numbers. I think that's what makes me unique. I've actually lived it and experienced it, right? I don't need a history lesson on the history of police. I don't need the history of the over-police in our communities. I've experienced it right here in my life, all the way up until this moment. One of the stifling numbers that has always bothered me about Broward County, we're 57% minority majority county, right? Black youth make up about 39 to 40% of the youth population in Broward County. Of the youth arrests in Broward County, Black youth make up 75% of those arrests, right? That's highly problematic in the sense that our communities are over-policed and they're targeting our young Black youth. We have a criminal justice system that looks at children as hyper criminals, right? As hyper violent. We don't see Black youth as kids. We don't treat Black youth like kids, right? We have to start treating kids like kids. We have to start giving children a second chance. Secondly, with direct filing, it's been clinically proven. I don't care where the study is. It could be found in Europe, United States, wherever you are. If you look up a study regarding the mental development of children, a kid's mind isn't fully developed well until after the age of 21, sometimes later. Now, if you ask my wife, she'll tell you that my mind is not fully developed, and it's still developing right now. But when you look at that issue, we're truly putting kids into a criminal justice system and treat them like adults. And we're seeing that they're not given a second chance, and we're seeing that their lives spiral downward and downward. It is my fundamental goal as the next state attorney of Broward County to not direct file youth as adults. We should truly treat kids like kids.
Yes. All right. Thank you for that one. Okay. So we talked about direct filing juveniles into adult court, which is definitely something that's problematic. What about the death penalty? What's your thoughts on the death penalty?
Yeah, you know, that's an important question because it's been an issue that's been going on rampant forever. There's just so many issues with it. I'll give you a personal account. I had an uncle that was brutally murdered in Georgia in the 90s. And death penalty was on the table. And I saw the strength of my grandmother and my mother, who was extremely close with my uncle. It was her oldest brother. My mother had her son at a very young age, at the age of 14, and he stepped in and he served as a father to my oldest brother. And so she had a very close personal relationship with my uncle. And so when they went up there, they had an opportunity to speak to the prosecutor. They had an opportunity to speak to the judge. And they actually recommended and said, hey, we don't want you seeking the death penalty in this case. We don't want him to die. And that right there showed me a level of forgiveness that I'd never seen in my life. And it showed a different type of religious resolve that I'd never seen in my life experience up to this point. And it's had a profound effect on my life and how I view things. When we look at the death penalty now in the current state in Broward County, and my function as state attorney of Broward County, I personally am against the death penalty. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's a deterrent. I don't think it deters future actions. I truly believe that it's something that should be outlawed. But I think the appropriate entity to do that is the legislature or the Supreme Court. And so with that said, as state attorney, I will have sworn, or I will swear in January, to uphold the Constitution and laws of the state of Florida. What I can say is that I don't want a governor or a legislature coming down telling me, Harold Pryor, state attorney of the 17th Judicial Circuit, we're going to take away all murder cases from you, and we're going to take away all those cases that may reach that threshold for death penalty from you.
Like they did in Orlando?
Like they did my friend Hermes Ayala in Orlando. And so I truly believe that I don't want a situation where the legislature comes in and takes away any of my discretionary functions that the people have given to me, because we see that's a common theme. They like to come here and take away people who have been voted into office.
Yeah.
And so as state attorney, what I could tell
people voted for Amendment 4 and they're like, nah, we don't like that.
No, we don't like that, right? Which is terrible. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that next when I finish this. I want to go into that too.
65% of the people voted for it. Like, what are you doing?
Right. And so what I can tell those who are opponents of the death penalty, watch my when I'm elected, when you vote for me, I'm praying that you vote for me. And then when I earn your vote, look at my record after the first year of the first term. And I guarantee that when you look at my record, you'll be proud of it. You'll be proud of the stance that we take on looking at cases. What I will say is that as state attorney, we will review cases that are eligible, that reach that threshold for death, and we'll look at them on a case-by-case basis, and it will be a panel of attorneys, and we'll make our determination after the review of those cases.
All right, so you said you wanted to talk about Amendment 4. Let's talk about that.
Oh, look, I've been extremely bothered by that, and it's crazy. When Amendment 4 was passed, I remember texting a group of friends and saying, oh, watch, the legislature, they'll come in and do something about that. Right? And sure enough, they did. I see that the passing of the law to counteract 65% of the population's vote to restore returning citizens' right to vote, I see that as nothing more than them initiating a modern day poll tax. I have grandparents who were part of the civil rights movement who marched in Florida. They actually marched for migrant workers' rights in Central Florida and all throughout the South, and also did civil rights movements as well. My grandfather and grandmother actually went to the March on Washington, and they actually fought poll taxes that were going on in Central Florida. And so this is nothing more than a modern day poll tax. And we can't have constitutional offices, clerk's offices, we can't have the judiciary, we can't have sheriff's office or the state attorney's office complicit in the fundamental disenfranchisement of someone's right to vote. As state attorney, I'm going to fight like hell to ensure that we do everything in our power to not be a hindrance in a returning citizen's right to vote. I will stand with Desmond Meade and members of the FRRC. We're going to ensure that we give everyone every chance that we can give them to get their rights restored and be able to vote and not to be a hindrance. And also, we have to look out for all citizens because it's a fundamental right. No matter what you did, if you paid your debt to society, I truly believe that you should be given an opportunity to fully participate in the democratic experience. And it actually helps. It helps in the rehabilitation, because when you get out, you didn't feel like, okay, I'm a full member. I've been reintegrated into society. I can turn my life around, and that's now been put behind me, and I can be treated like a regular human being. And I think that's the goal of that.
Right, and I think that's an interesting thing. For some reason, I think the governor, all these legislators, they must think only Black people are felons and only Black people have lost their right to vote. And Desmond Meade is like the face of this, but he had someone, there was another white guy that had like a financial crime thing that lost his right to vote that was also part of this, who's a Republican. He's
a Republican, right.
Whole thing.
Right.
So I'm like, I was like, y'all must think only Black people are felons. It's so easy to be a felon. You become a felon with your third driver's license suspended. I was offered to work work in Ocala, Florida when I got out of law school, and I found out that they sentenced people to a year in the county jail for driving license suspended.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you people crazy? I can't work here. So people become felons throughout this state for like the wildest things, right?
Sandra,
$300 is a grand theft charge. You take somebody's phone, you're like a convicted felon for stealing an iPhone, right? So I think the people that are doing this, for some reason, they think it's only black people that's out here with felony records. And I'm here to tell them that that is not the case.
That is not the case.
It does probably more affect like poor people, and maybe they're in denial that they're poor white people, they're poor Hispanic people, all kind of poor people out here, but they really need to reconsider what it is that they're doing, because they're screwing a whole bunch of Republicans too, right?
Right. They could have a lot of people on their voting rolls, but they're not. That shows you they don't think sometimes.
Even just the possession of, we had a pill mill problem here. Like, I mean, it's getting better now, but like in 2010, it was a pill.
It's a big issue
on every corner. People got arrested for possession of a controlled substance. You got one oxy in your thing, and you're a felon because you have a controlled substance.
Right.
So I'm like, y'all need to really be for real about what it is that you're doing and really think about that. Yeah, so that I got on my little high horse about all that. I'm sorry.
No, thank you. Me too, because because me over
about one of the other things is about and I brought up addiction, is like how they criminalize addicts too, right? That's another one of the things that I think like we need to figure out something else. I mean, you arresting people for possession of heroin or possession of crack cocaine, and you don't put them in treatment, you're gonna be arresting them again as soon as they get out of jail for possession of heroin and possession of crack cocaine. So how is it that, do you have any plans in your office about dealing with people that are addicts, not traffickers?
And once again, it goes to adequately training your prosecutors and letting them have discretion and actually being able to look and read between the lines. Let me first start off saying this. I truly believe the criminal justice system isn't well equipped. Any prosecutor's office, any court system, although it has good intentions with drug court, I don't think the criminal justice system is well equipped to deal with addiction issues. And so I think those cases should be treated as such. If you can avoid bringing prosecution for people that commit certain low-level crimes or offenses that aren't violent in nature, to keep them out of the system due to addiction issues, I think we should treat it as such and not criminalize them. But I think one thing that we can do is we can expand problem solving in therapeutic courts. We can expand some of the offenses or the opportunities that someone can actually go into drug court, and even we can expand it to mental health courts. I truly believe that anyone that is caught with a possession case, you should be given an opportunity to go to drug court or be given an opportunity to seek an alternative in the criminal justice system. We should not be filling up the jail population with people with addiction issues and even mental health issues. There's hundreds of thousands of people in the state of Florida that are incarcerated in the criminal justice system, and a lot of them they have addiction issues, and a lot of them have just scored a lot of points because of their addiction issues, and they scored the time to actually go to prison. That's where having prosecutors that can read between the lines and look at these situations and say, okay, although this guy is scoring prison, although this person is scoring a year and a day in prison or 2 years in prison, let's look at the offenses. And I always did that because I had family members who were addicts who actually went to prison, right? And when you look at their score sheets and some of the people that I would look at when I was a prosecutor, you look at the list of crimes: possession of heroin, possession of cocaine, right? In the 80s, 90s, right? Which scored a lot, right? And back then the thought was, even if you were in a possession case, oh, you're a bad person, you must be a dealer, but really he was an addict. Right. Then you see those sprinkles of grand theft. You see the sprinkles of burglary, right?
And then then they get into repeat offender court, right? Like repeat offenders, and then they're gonna get double the time. I mean, it's insane.
So you have to have prosecutors that can read between the lines and look at those cases and say, oh, okay, John is scoring 2 years in prison, but I'm looking at his score sheet and all of them seem addiction related. He's committing these burglaries and grand thefts because he's trying to fund his addiction. And so we have to have prosecutors that can understand these. I had prosecutors, they didn't look at that when I worked with them. They would just say, oh, he scores 2 years in prison. He stole something from a store. Oh, let's get him in, I'm just kidding. But that's a problem. That's a problem. And so that goes to that goes to adequately training your prosecutors and then also hiring prosecutors that understand these scenarios, these situations. I didn't need to take a crash course on this. I didn't need to go ask anyone questions about all of these facts and scenarios because I lived it. I experienced it. And so happened by the grace of God, I'm experienced and able to have an opportunity to run an office that actually affects these decisions. We've never really had anybody in this office that's actually lived it. You get what I'm saying? That actually understands it. And I think that's important. We need that. I think we need that.
You would think that they've been exposed to this for like 40 years of seeing like certain patterns of things happening. Right. And some light bulb would go off and be like, oh, dang, maybe we should. No. None of that happens. It's just keep doing what you're doing. All right. Exactly. We talked about that. You brought up the jails and people getting scored into prison time. So we got this whole coronavirus, COVID-19, that's literally changed our lives. I mean, it's just turned everybody's life upside down. My kids have been stuck in their house since March, right? I think they done been outside maybe 4 times, and my daughter's like, it's coronavirus out there. She don't want to go. But you need to take a walk or something. So I have her doing jumping jacks in the house to get activity because she doesn't want to go outside. So, but what about the jail population, right? So you got people that are in jail for some of it serious, some of it might be a little bit of nonsense. You got cops that want to continue to arrest people, even though there's like a coronavirus problem. As state attorney, would you be willing to look at the jail population and if, and maybe, dismiss charges or give people credit time served to get them out of there? Or even when the police wants to bring somebody into jail, you be like, listen, cop, don't you know it's coronavirus in here? Why are you bringing this man into jail and exposing a whole bunch of people? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I've actually
differently post-COVID because of COVID. It's really going to change the way a lot of things are done.
No, it's true. It's true, and it's going to affect a lot of things. I initially when we started this whole quarantine thing, that kind of crossed my mind about the people that are in custody, particularly the people that are in custody for low-level offenses or nonviolent offenses. So what I did was I actually reached out to the chief judge. I reached out to Chief Judge Jack Tudor. I reached out to Mike Satz's office. Mr. Satz sent over Maria Schneider to sit in a meeting. I reached out to the public defender's office. We had Gordon Weeks in this meeting. And then I decided also to invite Mayor Holness to this meeting. And then we had members from the community. So I actually invited some groups that have been active in this. Chainless Connections with Mark Mitchell. I invited New Florida Majority, Dwight Bullock from New Florida Majority. And I also invited the Quenisha. She's the president or she's the chair of the Broward Dream Defender Squad.
Yes.
And so this was the first time they never really had an opportunity to sit in the same room or a Zoom conference, right?
Right.
To sit in the Zoom conference with the chief judge of Broward County, the mayor of Broward County, high-ranking officials from the state attorney's office, and the public defender's office. And so I gave them an opportunity, reaching out to all of these people. I gave them opportunity to hear from these people who were actually close to the people in custody. And to say, hey, you have a lot of people in here for low-level offenses or for nonviolent offenses, and it's just not moving, right? But then on the other end, we had an opportunity to have them, the activist groups or local community groups, hear from the judge and the state attorneys as to what they were doing. And so there was a concerted effort to identify nonviolent offenses or low-level offenses and try to get them out, right? But then you get into the threshold of the people that might walk that line. You have in there for probation violations, right? You have some people in there for certain violent offenses, right, with victims involved. And so that's where it kind of gets sticky, right? So as state attorney, what I would do going forward, and I think I'm fortunate to say this, I think there could potentially be another wave because our governor isn't taking it seriously. And when you don't have leadership at the top, everyone's going to follow that lead and people are going to keep going to the beaches. I think there could
parties of 20 people and then everybody gets sick.
Right. So I think we're going to have a second surge of this thing. I just don't think we're going to go back to normal for quite some time until there's a vaccine or something out there to combat this. And so we're going to have a state attorney that's willing to, once again, bring together these stakeholders. I truly believe we should have groups like Mark Mitchell's organization, groups like Dream Defenders and Black Lives Matter. We should reach out to those groups, NAACP, reach out to the members of the community. Let's locate some of these people that are in custody. Come to me, the state attorney, and we reach out to the public defender. We have the judge, and we set up a docket, something like a rocket docket or emergency docket. And we address these issues on a case-by-case basis as they come in. I'm willing to tell you as state attorney, when we review those cases and we see that a person hasn't committed a violent offense or a person that we can actually let out of custody, and we can have a monitoring system to ensure that, hey, they return to court when there is in fact a court appearance, that they don't pose a significant danger to the community, we can let those people out. But it takes prosecutors that aren't lazy, that are willing to actually spend the time to actually do it. And so I think that would be my stance. That would be the process for me going forward, is be willing to have these emergency dockets that go past 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock. And we look at these cases on an individual basis. And if I have to do it myself, I will do it myself. In fact, I'm telling you right now, as state attorney, I will sit on some of these dockets to review some of these cases and to make the case that we release some of these people. But also, I have to be honest to the general public at large. We have to review these cases, and we have to be careful. We have to be prudent. But if the facts are there and we can let this person out, right, and if we can properly monitor them and ensure that they don't pose a danger to the community, even if they kind of walk that line, we should be able to give them opportunity to do it. And I think we should do it expeditiously. And I think we can if we have stakeholders willing to come together to actually make that happen.
Okay, so you have some of your some of the people that's running against you, they want to eliminate cash bail.
Yeah.
What
yes.
are your thoughts on that?
I do want to eliminate cash bail. And what I want to do is I want to switch over to a DC model. I want to switch over to a risk assessment, pretrial risk assessment program. I've done research on the pretrial risk assessment program in DC. It has an 89% return rate, right? 89% return rate to come to court. Guess what? That's better than Broward County, and Broward County has a cash bail system. Mm-hmm. What we find with the pretrial risk assessment,
County arresting homeless people that don't have no address, and then trying to send letters
right.
to God knows where.
Right. So yeah, you're not gonna return.
Some homeless dudes, like, that's why
right. They're sending the court notices to Publix, right? Right. No, and I've seen that. Yeah. So I truly think we could go to a pretrial risk assessment program. What it looks at, it balances the individual's likelihood to return to court. They're looking at victims' rights. As we know, we're in the state of Florida. Victims have a constitutional right in Florida to be heard and seen through every stage of the prosecutorial process. So we have to balance that, but also we have to balance the seriousness of the crime, whether or not it's a violent nature crime. I think if we switch over to that full risk assessment program, we can totally eradicate the cash bail system, and we can kind of move away from this myth that a cash bail ensures that someone's going to return to court. It doesn't. It's not a deterrent, much like the death penalty. But as for right now, I am for no cash bail for low-level offenses, misdemeanor offenses, and nonviolent offense. If it's a nonviolent offense, that's ranging from misdemeanors to felonies, we shouldn't be issuing cash bail under any circumstance.
It's interesting because I was a public defender when I graduated from law school, and I was a public defender in Sarasota, Florida. Right? If you've been to Sarasota,
I've been to Sarasota.
Listen, I couldn't stay in Sarasota because I had a problem with all the jail time they would give. I was like, wait, what? You send them to jail for what? You know, people. Yeah. Kmart and they're stealing like $200 worth of stuff. Half the time they don't even make it out the store because their loss prevention is serious. Like they serious about that stuff.
No, it's serious up there. They take it seriously.
Listen, we had one lady. You remember Eckert? You're probably young, so you don't remember
Eckert. Drugs. I remember Eckert. Come on.
So Eckert drugs. She steals like some pain, like a leave or something out of Eckert drugs, and they're prosecuting grandma. I'm like, y'all really arrested grandma for $6 worth of a leave, and then you have someone stealing food out of Publix and all that kind of stuff. And I had another guy, he would dine and dash. You know the dine and dash? He ate food at like Denny's and then dipped and didn't pay the bill. And of course he didn't go to court. Y'all ain't had
a full bill.
He gets out, he don't have a place to stay, don't get an address. The KPS is $2,500. This dude took $11.38 worth of food out of Denny's. Where's he gonna get $250, $2,500 to pay some bond? Like,
guess he can wash some dishes, right? I guess they thought he could wash some dishes and stuff. at some of the restaurants where he's dining and dashing, I guess.
You know,
right?
I mean, he sat back there, ate his food up. I guess the waitress wasn't paying attention, and he was gone. And they call the police and they write up the thing. And
Andrew, I got a funny story with that. My grandmother, God bless her, so she passed away 10 years ago, I think a week and a half ago, and we one time went to a local restaurant, Sonny's Barbecue, and I guess we
Sonny's Barbecue.
Ordered a full meal. I mean, we ate good. It was just me and my brother, and he was like 8 at the time. I was like 10, and ate a full meal. She reached in her purse. She didn't have her money. She didn't have anything. And so she's freaking out. She said, "Oh, Lord, what we going to do?" You know, she's a Baptist woman. Oh, God, what we going to do, baby?
And
so then the manager comes over.
Right? You couldn't get a cell phone and no one could
you couldn't.
Right,
didn't have a cell phone. She didn't have a credit card then. And so I remember she puts her hand up and calls the manager over, and the manager comes over and says, "How you doing, ma'am?" She said, "How you doing, mister?" She's like, "Sir, I wanted to celebrate my boys, my babies. They just finished the last day of school, and I wanted to take them on a nice meal, and I seem to have left my money at home." She's a very charming, beautiful woman. And she said, "Sir, I see we got this huge bill on our hands." She's like, "You mind if we wash dishes to play it off? Please don't call the cops on me, sir."
That is
and so his reaction was your reaction. He just lets out this huge laugh, and he said, "Ma'am," he's like, "this meal is on me. Congratulations on them finishing school." He said, "You know, I would have let you go home and get your money and bring it back to me, you know." But that just brought up a memory.
Yeah,
that was just a funny memory.
Sometimes that's what you need to do, right? Like just understand.
She offered to wash dishes.
This happened because I done went to the store, had a whole cart full of stuff, and especially with COVID. So now I don't even go shopping no more. I just have Instacart.
We don't either.
Not everybody's able, so I'm not trying to, But I went into because I don't want to carry a bag, and I usually just put my card in my pocket. I done went to the self checkout and checked out all the stuff, and then I go and I'm like, "Oh damn, I left the card in the car." So it happens. And luckily, I was like, "Well, I'm gonna have to go outside and get this and come back." But he was an understanding person, because someone could have acted like she was.
It could have been bad.
They could have chosen not to believe her, and have you getting arrested in front of the grandkids, like, and traumatize you guys for that, right?
Well, right, but I just like how she offered my services without my consent, which was funny.
Y'all was gonna help her. She wasn't watching the dishes.
She would have sat down and watched this.
So y'all sat here and ate too, so we all watching dishes today. We are all watching dishes. All right, so it was a pleasure talking to you. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you. And the last thing I was going to bring up, because you talked about the innovative programs that you want to do in the office, so we don't have to get into that. You're going to monitor, make sure the people are honest about wanting to buy, buying into what it is that you're doing. What about salaries? What are you going to do? What can you do, or is there anything you could do about salaries to keep more experienced people in the office longer?
Look, there's a lot. Thank you for that question, because there's a lot, and I think that goes to my training and experience so far in my career. I've done research on the budget. For 2019-2020 fiscal year, the state attorney's office was allocated close to $40 million. A lot of people don't understand that the $40 million, or any allocation of money that's given to the state attorney's office any given year, 95% of the monies allocated from the legislature goes to salaries, right? Why is there an issue with salaries in Broward County? I can't understand that for the life of me. The problem is you have people running that office with no business acumen or understanding. Thank God that I've had an experience to serve as an in-house counsel for a multi-million-dollar telecommunications company, where I've dealt with transactions that were 2 times, 3 times that the budget of the state attorney's office. And so day one, which I alluded to earlier, is I'm going to do an official audit of the budget and to figure out what are we doing wrong. I understand that there's vendor agreements out there that are negotiated grossly high, right? Those are some agreements that we can renegotiate. And I have that experience. I can actually reach out to these vendors and renegotiate better deals on behalf of the state attorney's office. Secondly, the problem is with the salaries. We had the legislature in their infinite wisdom decide to increase the pay for prosecutors. Now prosecutors make $50,000, which is a great thing, and I support that. But they didn't factor in those prosecutors that have been there 5, 10, 15 years, right? And so what comes with that is you need a state attorney that can go to Tallahassee, advocate for more funds, but also have a unit that specializes in writing grants,
Mm-hmm.
getting those fundings for special units to actually allocate the funds to adequately pay our state. It's a problem when the salaries in your office are top heavy, right? And the
Yes.
people that are working aren't being paid. I'll give you a story of me and my wife.
One that works
My
the
wife
least,
and I,
the most.
right. My wife and I were prosecutors together, and we would have to make tough decisions. Sometimes it was either, hey, do we put money in our car to make it to work, or do we save enough money to be able to pay for lunch or pay for dinner? I had prosecutors in the office who had no support, right? And they'd go to Publix and buy the 12-inch foot-long sub, and they split that in half, and that's for their lunch and that's for their dinner,
I
right?
work for
Or I even
so
knew
we got
someone
paid
had
once
to
a
make it
month.
stretch,
So you get
right?
paid once a month, right? So like
Right,
by
and
the
you
end of that
get
month,
paid once
it's
a month,
rough. Yes.
right? And you're not paid anything in the first way, so that's a problem. Now, also, the support staff tends to get overlooked in this discussion as well, and the support staff is nothing but women and minorities, right? A lot of Black women in that office who have single kids, they're single mothers, and they're the only breadwinners in their family. And so Broward County, they only got a $1,200 raise, as opposed to Palm Beach and Miami-Dade support staff got almost a $1,500 to $1,700 raise. Why is that when we all get nearly the same amount of funding in the Tri-County area, but you're having a problem paying your attorneys or attorneys that have been there for a while that's done a good job,
Right.
that's done a good job, and your support staff who play an important function? I think it's important that we have someone in the office that has business acumen. It's great that you have people that have criminal law experience. I have criminal law experience, but you have people that you have to have someone that understands how businesses work, that has a legal acumen and business acumen to actually understand how budgets work and to properly allocate those funds to ensure that the attorneys and the support staff are being adequately paid.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so tell me how people can donate to your campaign, how they can find you if they want to volunteer. So let us all know.
Please. Look, I need all the help that I can get because we're in a historic race. As I've always told people, we are in the race for the soul and consciousness of Broward County. We have an opportunity to initiate ground level criminal justice reform. And it's time that we have state attorneys to actually understand the communities that they serve, that has the experience in both the criminal realm, civil realm, and also a business background to actually run an office of the magnitude of the state attorney's office. You can learn more about me and my platform and my stances at haroldpryor.com. Please check out my Twitter page at Pryor2020. And also you can see me on Instagram at HP for State Attorney. And also my Facebook page, which is Harold Pryor for State Attorney. Please ask me any questions that you have. You can donate to the website. Also, you can volunteer and get shirts and get yard signs, whatever you need to spread the word. But this is
selling the
important.
shirts, or they can just get the shirts if they volunteer for
They
you.
get them for free if they volunteer.
And so when is your election?
Our election is August 18th. August 18th. So please vote for me, Harold Fernandez Pryor. Let's make history. Chandra, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for sharing your platform with me and the other candidates, because I truly believe it's not about any of us. It's about this thing we call criminal justice reform. And we need an informed electorate. We need people to pick the right person for the job. I just so happen to think I'm the best for the job. But if not me, we need a strong progressive Democrat to run this office.
Absolutely.
And that's the important thing. That's the important thing.
All right. Have a good one. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today.
You too. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good one.
You too.
And let's make history.
We're going to make history.
We are.